Welcome to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast, where your host, Cassandra Crawley Mayo, helps you break free from obstacles and live life on your terms. Get ready to embark on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and inspiration. Tune in as we dive into captivating conversations with experts and explore topics that will ignite your passion and drive. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Let's dive in.
Good day out there to all of my listeners, and I'd like to welcome you to Is Your Way in Your Way. And some of you may ask, where in the world did she get that name from? But I just want you to know that is the name of my best-selling book titled Is Your Way in Your Way. And this podcast, let me tell you, the heart of this podcast is actually about empowering women to break through those internal barriers that's preventing you from living your best life on your terms. In other words, live more with a purpose and a meaning. It's about choosing that life-rooted joy, or some may say happiness, authenticity, and fulfillment, instead of just going through the motions every day. You know about that? I used to do that all the time. Come home, work hard, come home, eat, go to bed, work hard, come home. You know, it's just the same old thing. But hey, it's time for us to revisit whether there is a new chapter in our life. So I'm going to ask you this. When you achieved everything you thought success was supposed to look like, yet you discovered like a yearning in your belly, like it's something else. I know it's another chapter, but I can't figure out what it is. Well, listen, guys, today's guest knows that journey firsthand. After spending more than 3 decades at the highest level of corporate leadership, she made a courageous decision to reinvent herself and step into an entirely new purpose. If you've ever wondered whether it's too late to start over, pursue a new dream, or become the person God is calling you to be, this conversation is for you. Please join me in welcoming Anouk Brumfield. Hi, Anouk. How are you?
I am doing super fabulous. I am so excited to be with you today.
Well, I'm glad you're with me. And also, I pronounced your name wrong. It's Anouk. Is that correct? I told her listeners that I would probably end up saying Anouk, and I did. Well, look,
it's okay.
But before we get started into our conversation, I just want to read a tiny bit of what qualifies you to do what you're currently doing, and to kind of talk about what we're going to talk about. Like I indicated that you reinvented yourself. You're now a mindset coach. And you also retired from corporate America, and I think it was IBM. Now you're an international bestseller, speaker, mentor, and helping high-achieving professionals navigate life's next chapter with confidence and purpose. Your journey is a powerful example that success isn't about staying where you have always been. It's about having the courage, and I mean courage, to become who you were meant to be. And something else that we didn't talk about, but you're the host, the hottest host of a new inspirational radio show. So we want to kind of talk about that as well. So congratulations to you for reinventing success for you based on your terms. Now, in the beginning, you indicated that you came from humble beginnings. What triggered that fire in your belly that empowered you to even dream bigger?
So I will say that I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I was reared by a grandmother who only had a 3rd or 6th grade education. And she, even though she did not have the opportunity for a lot of classroom knowledge, she's one of the wisest persons I've ever met. And she really was a really great role model for me to see the value of hard work, for me to see the value of building relationships, for me to see the value of keeping your word. So as a little girl, and I was a skinny little girl, and I grew up, was known as one of the hoods, which is Cedar Grove here in Shreveport, Louisiana, I
Uh-huh.
asked so many questions. And I knew that I wanted more than what I saw in my current environment. And
Sure.
I just believe that if I could dream it or believe it, I could have it. And
Yeah.
I feel like I
Mhm.
just needed to continue to ask those questions, get in front of the right people, get the right experiences. So
Mhm.
it really goes back to my grandmother. It
Yeah.
She taught me so much, she instilled so much. Yet I wanted to do more, be more than the environment that I was currently living in. And I wanted to really show my family that it could be done and make my grandmother very proud.
Oh, okay. Oh my goodness. I believe she's looking down and proud anyway for you, although she's not here on this earth. Um, so listening to you, you are a high achiever, and they say high achievers get burnt out. Um, and I can say this because I too, I did get burnt out, even self-sabotage. Um, and the only person I've heard and read about that never ever experienced self-sabotage was Oprah Winfrey. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing for her. And so I want to know, how did you break that cycle? Am I correct? You did get burnt out sometimes and you did experience self-sabotage?
I did all of that,
Okay.
imposter syndrome and all of that.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Again, I had this burning desire to achieve, burning desire to do more. And
Mhm.
so when I started my career in corporate America, I was always trying to progress really fast up that corporate
Uh-huh.
ladder to see if there really is a glass ceiling, like they used to say,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
I began to work really, really hard. And then there was a mentor said, don't work hard, work smart. But I was feeling like I had to do a combination of both.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget the seventh grade year of my son's school year. And I had gone through a divorce, and now I'm raising my son by myself. And I was asked to do two roles while at IBM.
Mhm.
I was having
Yeah.
to travel every week to Mountain View, California, to be
Yeah.
on site with a client from, I would leave on Sunday, come back on Thursday, and then I would do the other role Thursday and Friday, and then
Yeah.
have a little time to spend with my son. So my mom
Yeah.
had actually step in to rear my son for me that seventh grade year. And
Oh.
again, I wanted to do both. And that was the year that I got promoted to an executive at IBM. And
Mm.
I felt like, wow, everybody was congratulating me and
Yeah.
they were so excited, but I felt so unfulfilled
Yeah.
because I had dropped a really significant ball. I had dropped my priorities. I was focused on that when I should have been focused on, my son, and
Okay.
my priorities
Mhm.
were in order. So that's when I felt burnout. And that's when I realized too that you can really do both, but there is a way that you navigate that. And I did not learn that or know that initially. And that's
Yeah.
what we try to help other people with. But to this day that I still not completely forgiven myself for not being there my son's seventh grade year because he had
Yeah.
so many challenges just because
Sure.
his parents were not there.
Yeah.
And I now have figured out the master plan to do both.
Mm. Now I know I would love to hear that master plan, and so would my listeners. And just listening to you, I too was a very skinny child. So we have a similarity there.
Yeah.
And I used to always say, you guys, you just wait. I'm not
Yeah.
going to be like this forever. You know, but that was something in my psyche, like, oh, she's so skinny. So I get that part. I also get the part in regards to ambition. You know, I did not know for me what it was that I wanted to do with my life. Even going to college, I had no clue. And I felt bad about that. And then I realized that what I supposed to have done was waiting for me to come to it so that I could do it. you know. So I get the burnout and I get the self-sabotage. I even procrastinate. I'm even a perfectionist. I'm recovering perfectionist,
Yes.
and it just, yeah, and it sounds like we kind of were in the same realm, walking down that same street, but you had a master plan to break that. What was your plan? What did you do?
Yeah. So after I started progressing and hitting all the targets, like even the
Yeah.
person that recruited me to come into corporate America, that was one of my mentors. Once I surpassed her, I'm like, oh my God, like this is really happening for me.
Yeah.
Now I really need to step back to truly assess life, truly
Mm.
make sure that I understand what's my purpose. Because like
Mhm.
you stated, I just got into something, doing something, and realized that, hey, I can do this, but I'm not sure this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I never really assessed that. I didn't understand my purpose. I didn't align to that. And so what I've now learned around the age of 40 is when I began to truly self-reflect and
Okay.
to reevaluate life, and to begin to understand, my purpose, and I set goals. So I began at that
Mhm.
point to say, I'm in it at this point, and I'm
Yeah.
doing really well, that
Yeah.
I want to make sure I stay in this until 55, and I want to
Okay.
retire early enough where I can still go do something else and still
Yeah.
enjoy it. And I want to start building something on the side so that I can
Mm.
get positioned for my next. And
Mhm.
so I began to say, it is so important. There was three things that I feel like are so very important. Is number one is you have to truly know yourself.
Mm.
A lot of
Mm.
times we don't know who we are. For
Mhm.
whatever reason, it's like you said, sometimes we can just be moving, doing things. And so you really need to take time to understand your values, your passion, your purpose. And then
Right.
a lot of times you can know who you are, but you can go on a performance streak where you're performing for other people
Yeah. That's
versus
true.
being your authentic self. So number two is, once you know yourself, it's important to be yourself. That
Mhm.
we are all unique creatures that God perfectly made, and that we have to be comfortable in our own skin and to be ourselves. And we
Yeah.
have to always remember that an original is worth way more than a copy. And
Yeah.
then number three, we have to surround ourselves. We have to
Mhm.
remember that no one gets anywhere alone, that it is important that we have our village, we have our tribe, we have our sponsors, we have our coaches, we
Sure.
have our mentors, because there's so much value that can be brought to the table when you're building those, relationships. And so that's
Exactly.
what I learned. So once I began in my 40s to begin to go through these three steps for
Yeah.
myself,
Right.
that I began to say, it's okay for me to say that I'm climbing up this ladder that I don't even know if this is the right ladder anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
so then I had to just be comfortable with, making that exit to go and align with what my true purpose is, what God was telling me to do, and be aligned
Uh-huh.
with my calling.
Uh-huh. Let's talk about a purpose a little bit, because I started out and saying people want to revisit success in their terms, and to start having more purpose and meaning, because I if you for me, if you don't have meaning, it's like the core of our being, like why are we here? And I know there's a chapter in my book about dear women who are trying to figure out what their purpose is. How did you figure it out, or have you still figured it out? Are you trying? Are you there? How do you do that? I mean, how does, like our listeners are like, I know I have something, but I can't figure it out. How do they figure it out?
Yeah, again, that purpose is the reason that we're here and why we were
Mhm.
created. Some people, I need to get a copy of your book to read the chapter, and so this may be more of your expertise than mine, but for
Yeah.
me, I had to truly assess what my passion areas were.
Okay.
I had to
Okay.
truly assess what I really enjoyed doing, those things that came easy, the things that made me feel comfortable, the things that made me feel fulfilled.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
way I knew this is what
Mhm.
I'm supposed to be doing. And then
Mhm.
I spent time with God, private time with God, to guide me. And so now I'm just trying to be obedient in that. And
Okay.
it's amazing because when I reflect back on my life and I kind of think about as a little girl, the
Mhm.
things that I was doing, and I was not only skinny, but I was truly shy. And I
Uh-huh.
was so afraid of people, but I had an auntie named Bobby, who saw something in me early on, who began to have me speaking in front of different churches. And I was a
Yeah.
youth speaker. And even though I was shy, I loved that part. And then I would go back to my shell. But
Yes.
really think about it. And then I always loved an encouraging word. I felt like life can get really, really dim. And I
Mhm.
gravitated toward positivity. And so
Mhm.
I began to say, a lot of times it's right there in front of you and you missed it. A lot of things kind of go back to your childhood in a lot
Yeah.
of cases. So
Yeah.
now I feel like that's how I found my purpose, that I know
Okay.
what I truly enjoy. I know what gives me that inner comfort and inner peace,
Mhm.
joy.
And I love those three essentials you talked about, knowing yourself. I call it a self-discovery journey. That's kind of what my book is about. And we're not here to promote my book, but I too had to go on a self-discovery journey to figure out who am I, you
Mhm,
know, and what do I need to do to be my true self again? And I like the part when you talked about surround yourself with the right people, how
mhm,
critical that is. And I always say I have a personal board of directors because life is tough, you know, I just have certain people in my circle to help me in regards to what you were stating. And then another thing that's so ironic to me, Anouk, you talked about being 55. You're like, okay. My goal was to retire at 55. So I get that part. And I was successful. And I thank God that I was able to do that. But I also, as I was preparing for you, there has to be an essential mindset shift. Tell me more about that mindset shift that's essential.
Ready to design your dream life? Join Cassandra Crawley Mayo's Create and Design Your Best Life workshop. Break free from self-doubt and obstacles and step into a life of purpose and fulfillment. Click the link in the description to register now. Don't wait. Spaces are limited. Start living your best life today.
Yeah, I will have to say that you really do need to believe in yourself, and you really have to make sure that you have to give yourself grace,
Mhm.
because a lot of times we give other people grace, but we don't give ourselves grace. And
Right.
so sometimes you may be traveling down this road and you reflect back and you're like, why did I do that? Why am I here? How did I get here? And you just have to remember that life is a journey, that we all make mistakes. Give yourself some grace and, just go do it. So I had to just truly get back to the core to believe in myself. Now, early on, I had a goal like around the 40th time frame in my life. That's when I said I wanted to retire at 55. I ended up
Uh-huh.
retiring at 52 when I
Uh-huh.
I could retire
Ooh.
early.
Uh-huh.
And it was definitely something that was scary
Yeah.
because I was on a very highly compensated plan.
Mhm.
And I'm like, God, are you really telling me to do this?
Mhm.
And I knew that I had prepared. My financial advisors told me it was good, but I also knew I had this gap period before I really could tap into a lot of my retirement funds and things like that.
Right.
So I
Right.
really just had to trust, and I had to believe in God,
Mhm.
believe in myself, and give myself grace, because I reflect back a lot of times and say, gosh, I've wasted so much time.
Mhm.
And I wish I had that wisdom back then. People often ask the question is, what would you tell your younger self, right?
Yeah.
And so I just have to make sure that people know that it's never too late. Like,
Mhm.
give yourself grace and pivot if you need to pivot
Right.
and move forward and take all the things that you feel like you've made mistakes in as lessons and kind of leverage and build that and move forth, because we are in charge of our lives. We are the CEOs of our life, and
Absolutely.
we can create whatever life that we want to live. And I say co-create. We can't do anything alone. And so it's that mind shift, just believing that you can and start taking some steps.
Great. Yeah. So that's why we titled this podcast from boardroom to breakthrough. Okay. So you were in the boardroom, and actually listening, you were in your way, like many of us are. You were in your way, you were struggling with your son. Like, should I do this? Should I be there? What's my priority? Is it the money? Is it this? And then you were driven based on your childhood. This is where I want to be. This is, what I want to see. And then you're an introvert. Okay. So you kind of wanted to be silent, but you do your thing, you're speaking or whatever, and then you go back into your shell. So tell me about that book, 30 Days of Saying Yes, Miss Introvert. Tell us a little more about that.
Well, I will definitely say I was an introvert growing up. I was short and skinny. And then when I got to high school, I actually pivoted and I became an extrovert. And so I'm no longer shy. I probably talk and am too sociable now. So that is something that definitely changed. So as I was going through this reassessment, like you talked about, a self-discovery journey, I began to realize when I look back over my life, I've often put other people, other things ahead of myself, ahead of what was really best for me, and felt like, oh, I can go help and solve their problems, realizing, hey, I have my own problems over here.
Right.
And once I retired from IBM, again, to retire, to stop doing that, to go fulfill my purpose, I sat down to finish a book that I had started years prior, but I could never give myself the time that I needed. So that 30 Days to Yes to Me started out as a really thick book. And then I realized that, okay, people don't seem like they like to, do anything that's lengthy. So I said, how do I make this more digestible? So I reduced the size of the book and said, I'm going to make it more like a journey. And it was really a testament based upon what I was going through to say it is okay to prioritize yourself, and that we must love to ourselves. And we must make sure that we know that it's not being selfish to focus on yourself. It's really necessary. And so then people were like, well, how do you do that? So I wanted to give them like a 30-day practical guide of some things that you can truly do to kind of get back to yourself and prioritize yourself. So I'm pretty excited about that first book that I have, and I've written 2 others since then.
Okay. So based on your book and the guide that you've given individuals and doing your speaking and coaching, you talked about how you get really deep in your coaching and you provide, it sounds like in order to, based on your coaching and you're empowering individuals to do better, but you said you go deep in that. Tell me more about going deep. Give us a scenario for going deep doing your coaching.
Yeah, a lot of times we like to stay on the surface because it's really, comfortable. And in the coaching sessions, what I really try to do is I really want people to be real with themselves.
Okay.
And sometimes you have to kind of go back in order to move forward. So I do this whole thing about some, reflections where you kind of look in the mirror and you kind of talk about, who do you see, what do you see, and to really go and look at what are the things that you feel like were mistakes. And then you kind of forgive yourself and you kind of tear those things up. And then you begin to think about where you want to be 5 years from today. And you begin to write a letter to yourself. And then later we come back and, put some actionable things into place so that when you go back or you come to that letter 5 years from that day, that you can be really excited about what you did. So I think a lot of times that deep part is not missing the step of going back to really reassess. And there's always places in our lives that we're not proud of, that you have to definitely make sure that you forgive yourself and that you can learn from that so that you can be working from a very healed point of view. And so that's kind of what I do try to do on the deep versus saying, let's just look at goals and where you want to be. We got to go back in order to go forward.
Right. So in other words, you have them to give themselves grace, as you indicated, or one of the things. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Because you're on a different you're on a different chapter right now. Okay, you've left corporate America. You were courageous in doing that because it takes courage to change. It really does, because we want to be comfortable. We don't want to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. We're like, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So where do you see yourself, I would say, about 5 years from now?
Yeah, I know my purpose is to inspire, encourage, motivate, and empower people. And so 5 years from today, I can see that I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of people and truly impact them so that I have aided them one way or another in getting to the best version of their life. And so I have the opportunity to do that, not just from my books or not from coaching, but also from my radio programs or some of my speaking engagements or some of the workshops that I do. So I'm hoping that at that point, I've reached a mass number of people that the name Anouk is a name that a lot of people, recognize. And my name Anouk actually means grace and favor. And so kind of what I would like to see 5 years from now, that they can remember the name Anouk and that they can say, yep, one day I was down and she gave me, or I heard an encouraging word from one of her shows, or, hey, I read the book and this tip truly, helped me out. And that she was someone that was identifiable and that she helped me to see that the best is yet to come, that I can do this. And that if she did it, anybody can do it.
That's correct. Right. Good. Now, your radio show, I've listened to it and I was impressed by your show. And
Thank you.
And I think you appear to be someone that's like, it's kind of like, okay, I've done this. I wrote my book. All right, I'm done. And you're like, nah, I'm not done. It's kind of like, okay, well, much is given, much is required. So you want to do some more. And then you decide, okay, I think because I want to inspire, empower individuals, then I'll do the radio show. Was anything in your way when you were thinking about doing the radio show?
I was in my own way. So a guy named Elal, I was actually on a panel for the state of Black Shreveport a couple of years ago. And he interviewed the panelists. And then after he interviewed me, he said, you need your own show. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah. And I know how to make that happen. And I was like, oh, I'm not interested in that. That's not me. No way. And so then he called me up. We talked a couple of weeks later and he says, now, what do you like to do? So that's when I said, I like to inspire, encourage, motivate, empower. He said, this could be a medium to help you with that. I said, well, I didn't think about that. And I don't know how this works. I don't know how to do that. And I said, well, let me, pray about it and get back to you. And I kept thinking that, no, this doesn't work. This is not me. Well, I don't know. And so I was then led to say yes. And I told him yes, probably like in March. And then I said, but I still need some time to think through this just to make sure. And So I did my first show in June of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So I just recently celebrated, 2 years of the show. And
Awesome.
I am always really elated to hear or talk to someone that actually listens to the show. So thank you so much for tuning in. I really do
Mhm.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Wow. So, through the whole scheme of things, Anouk, it's like many of us are in our ways, you know. And I think one of the things that is concerning for me and what I want my listeners to hear is we want to be able to do what it is that we were ordained to do while we were here, because we're not just here to be here. I always say just live in a way that maximizes your personal happiness, authenticity, and true self. You got to live in that way and fulfillment, as you indicated, as opposed to, like I said in the beginning, going through the motions. And doing that, you portrayed some values like your son, and that was a priority of yours. And when you are doing what you want to do and get out of your way, you still want to make sure that is aligned with your values and well-being and pursue rather than just dream. So the values are in that as well. I can think of some incidents where individuals wanted me to do something. I'm like, well, no, I don't want to speak against that, because that's not who I am. I want to be authentic. I want to be, even though in corporate I was the many instances as you, the first African American female. And I had to pretend, I had to wear a mask so I could conform to like they are, because they're supposed to been. So I'm like, no, 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 no. And I was in my way, and that is destructive. So I want you to share with my audience, my listeners, where they can contact you, and just kind of share with them something um, some wisdom and some inspiration that we can leave this podcast with for them.
Yes, I would definitely. One of my favorite quotes growing up was shoot for the moon. And if you miss, you'll be among the stars.
Mm.
I just encourage anyone that's listening, watching today, that you can have whatever you want. That time is the only currency that we have no idea how much we have. And so we do not need to take any moment for granted. That you do not want to get to a point in the future where you reflect back and say, I wish I could have done this or that. Just go do it. A lot of times you don't have to have the entire game plan mapped out. Just take a step. And I guarantee you, God will place angels along your path to kind of help you with the next step.
That's right.
And I just encourage you to just go do it. Go live your best life, because life is short and life is precious. And that just like you have career goals, you should have life goals. There should be things like, if there's places you want to go, things you want to see, create a plan and make that happen. And we all have the same amount of time every day, and making sure that you're maximizing your time on the right things, the things that bring you joy, and don't compare yourself to other people. Social media really has things messed up where you see all these highlights. People don't give you the lowlights, but you have to remember that everybody should create their own operational definition of success, because what might make you happy, Cassandra, necessarily make me happy. So we should be comfortable being our authentic self and know what makes us happy, brings us that joy. So if you want to reach out to me, I have everything consolidated. I like simple. My website is www.anouk-mc.com. On that website, you can get my contact information. You can see all my social media. You can also purchase any one of my books. I actually have 3 books. My most recent book that came out a couple of weeks ago is called Yes to Me, Break the Cycle. And I'm very proud of this baby because, that first book I talked about, Yes to Me, 30 days.
Yeah.
And now I'm saying once you now are prioritizing yourself, there's probably still some things that you need to release yourself from. And so that's what this edition of Yes to Me, Break the Cycle is available as well. So again, my website is www.anouk-mc.com, and Anouk is ANOUK.
Well said. Well said. Thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you for having me.
I think it would be great. We have a lot of similarities.
Yes,
Which I don't think are accidents at all. And my prayer before I even have a show or have my podcast is for someone to say, you know what, something was said and I'm going to pivot and I'm going to try this thing. So I'm hopeful this particular podcast is one of them. And like I say to my guests, I want you to think about it, everyone. Is your way in your way from doing what it is that you've always wanted to do or most recently wanted to do? So again, thank you, Anouk. Thank you, my listeners, and God bless you. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you've been enjoying our empowering conversations, make sure you don't miss out on future episodes of Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. Stay in the loop with all the latest episodes. Join our mailing list over at CassandraCrawley.com. And before you go, hit that like button, share with your friends, and subscribe now. Until next time, let's get ready to live your best life.